What is up, ladies and gents? Welcome back. I'm Rick, and today we're going to take a look at an activist that I had been working for the last couple of years. It's a bit strange for me because it's the first time on this show I'm covering someone that I had known personally and had been good friends with. Psychedelic spirituality is becoming its own industry, and so naturally it's going to attract all sorts of frauds and flim-flammers, and I do my best to shine a light on it and raise awareness so that people can make informed decisions and not waste hard-earned dollars. Today is a similar public service announcement, but instead of taking people's money to sell them false enlightenment, this lady has been taking donation dollars and selling false hope. Promises that she'll pass bills and initiatives, and that if she pulls in enough money, she'll get plant medicines cleared for medicinal use in Washington state. But after watching today's episode, I'm sure you'll agree with me that that's never gonna happen and all these donation dollars are being wasted. I met Leonora Russell in November of 22 and started working as a volunteer for both of the nonprofits she heads, the Entheos Society of Washington and Adapt Washington. I helped organize and run numerous events and fundraisers, and I built and managed both YouTube channels. Our goal was to work around the clock, doing everything we could to ensure that the people of Washington state would be able to vote to legalize plant medicines in the November of 24 election. So that gave us 2 whole years to work on it, and at the time I had no reason to believe that it wouldn't happen. I myself had been healed and given a whole new shot at life. Mushrooms had freed me from years of addiction and crippling mental health issues. So this was something I believed in, and I was so excited to be a part of it. We had a super solid team and a large supportive community, and we were on our way to doing big things. And then into our garden a serpent did crawl. Leo kept mentioning that we needed to be doing more to attract the attention of big money donors, fat cats willing to cheddar off stupid amounts of money to our organization. And that meant that we seriously needed to up our game. Leo had always been a little bit out there with the astrology and the UFOs and the psychic powers, but harmlessly so. I don't believe in any of that stuff, but lots of people do in this community, and that's their thing, so whatever. But Leo started to book events and guest speakers that seemed to be crossing the line from what's considered traditional mysticism and garden variety woo. We had anti-vaxxers and other conspiracy nut jobs. We had people on that spoke of themselves like they were gods or at the center of some new age prophecy. Shamans and spirit guides that speak of themselves in the third person, people that claim that psychedelics give them the healing powers of Jesus to cure diseases like cancer. And I began to have my concerns that promoting these nut jobs could be damaging our credibility in the eyes of these big money donors we're trying to attract. Here's an example of a guy we had on back in the summer of 23 that claimed to be a psychic and a time traveler with powers that rival that of Professor X or Dr. Manhattan.
So I can go to the past, I can go to the future, I can go to the here and now. Like the other night, I went to, first time I done this, but I went to a 1971 Elvis Presley concert in Las Vegas, Nevada, and I was able to take a photo of it. Take a photo of Elvis while sitting in the audience with my cell phone, because anything that I have with me now, I can take with me to the past or the future because I physically go there without leaving my chair.
You have this picture of Elvis with you right now, you said?
It's on my phone, not on my computer.
I want to see this.
I want to see it too.
Bust it out, man.
I do have on my laptop here a video of how I made it rain last week. If anybody wants to see that.
Sure. Yeah. I am all.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to see, but there's the cloud down there, and there's Elvis Presley. Not a very great photo, but you can tell.
You sure that's dude? That I don't know.
Hold on.
Well, I'm fully aware this dude really isn't a psychic time traveler, but I was curious what he would say if I asked to see this picture of Elvis. And at first I thought it was a picture of an Elvis impersonator. After the event, I did an image search and I was wrong. It really is a picture of Elvis that this phony yoinked off the internet. This guy was here to lie about his superpowers for a full hour and hope that someone would be gullible enough to take his $200 Secrets of Time Travel course. I was embarrassed and kind of pissed off at Leo for booking this clown. I began to request that we have some type of vetting process for the speakers we have at these events, but that never happened. And things took a turn for the worse as we entered 2024. At some point, Leo had discovered and got completely cracked out on TikTok conspiracy videos. It was like these little digital termites were in there chewing on her brains. It was a noticeable difference. And I knew it had gotten bad when I saw this 1-hour stream she did for the Entheo channel. It was supposed to be about the simulation theory and how that's somehow connected to psychedelics, but it devolved into Leo sharing TikTok videos of all her favorite conspiracy content. The finest brain rot the internet had to offer. I mean, it was all of it. CERN, the eclipse, the mud floods, flat earth, stuff going on with islands off Antarctica. It was insane. And I knew it had gotten bad because she shared this video on her main platform and thought it was real.
Here we are. This was something I
People are freaking out about a video of a woman in France that seems to be levitating somehow. No one knows if this is witchcraft. Some people say this is witchcraft. Maybe she's an alien. No one knows what's going on here. This is really crazy. Check this out. Pay very close attention here. The heck is going on here, guys? Look at that. People are freaking out about it. Now, this is the part of the video where they're going to try to help her stay put on the ground. Pay very close attention.
Okay, so I think if we are looking at the universe as a strange and wonderful place, and there are some folks that are just kind of fascinated by the mysteries of the universe kind of thing, you know, those kinds of things fascinate me.
This blew me away. All this jerk had to say was alien and witchcraft, and Leo was sold, hook, line, and everything. She really thought that if these guys let go, that poor girl was gonna float off into space. I mean, it took me all of about 5 seconds to realize it's just some street magic. The guys are actually holding her up. It's a neat illusion, I guess, but Leo saw it as proof of the supernatural or that we live in a simulation or something. And this was when my concern turned into full-blown panic. I mean, imagine if you're Mr. or Mrs. Charity McMoneybags and you're looking for a noble cause to pour a small fortune into, and you came across this stream of Leo thinking that floating girl really needed to be stuffed in that duffel bag. Would you see that person as also being able to sensibly manage large sums of money? Needless to say, and a surprise to absolutely no one, we failed. We failed to raise the necessary money to get plant medicines on the ballot for the November 2024 election. And I was crushed. She said it was being pushed back to the 2026 midterm elections if we can raise the necessary funds. And that's when I knew it was never gonna happen. I actually felt bad for anyone that had given us a single dime. I myself had donated a few $100 over the years, and I felt scammed. And Leo's conspiratorial paranoia and nonsense started to reach all new epic levels of ridiculous. She started having some trouble with her Zoom setup. Something in the settings, maybe her internet connection, I'm not sure. But instead of Googling it and figuring out how to fix it or calling up a, tech support person and having them walk her through it, she takes it all as validation that she really is such a major figure in the psychedelic movement that the government is spying on her and screwing with her Zoom setup.
Here, my Zoom issues, I swear to you, have nothing to do with my technological issues. And I wish you guys could see that currently I'm showing no one trying to come into the Zoom. And I might just, I don't know if you can share that part of the screen. But right now, if you look at my Zoom, which is just so bizarre to me and kind of freaks me out, but literally I'm the only one on the Zoom. So I've heard that there's like 20 people or something in the waiting room. And yeah, just letting you know, like literally no one's showing up. So with folks who are not able currently to get on the Zoom, for some reason, folks are not able to get on the Zoom right now. And so we are just a little bit behind schedule. So I do apologize for that. I don't know why we're having technical difficulties. It does seem a bit curious to me that we haven't been able to kind of show anyone in the Zoom. I don't know why we've been having so many problems with the Zoom. I find that very crazy.
Whatever the hell the problem was, she had 2 whole months to get it sorted out before the next major event, and she neglected to do so. So naturally, come the big day of, things started going wrong. And instead of lifting a single goddamn finger to try to figure out what the hell the problem is and troubleshoot and fix it, she just starts going on about how she's on some government watch list.
I think for some reason people are getting an error message, and I'm like a total conspiracy theorist. I'm always imagining that I'm on a government list because I totally know that I am, and I try to ignore it. But in moments like this where like 5 people are like, I can't get in, I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, it works for some people. So I just was wondering if someone could directly do an invite from the Zoom itself, but it's totally fine if it's too much. Like, I'm sure it'll get sorted out. So just
Well, it didn't. It didn't sort itself out. And so by that evening, I started getting all these frantic and hysterical texts from Leo, and she's freaking the F out and doesn't know what to do. So I hopped on to see if I can try and troubleshoot it.
I'm just wondering if we want to just create a new Zoom meeting, because it just seems like this is like corrupted or something is wrong.
Is that? Oh, crap.
Let's do it. I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, that's weird. I was able to get on, no problem. That's
No, it
this
seems.
is the first time we run into this one. Crap.
Well, I've actually had people not been able to get before onto meetings before.
Yeah, exactly. And you didn't get it fixed. I had no idea what she meant by this one's corrupted or why she thought moving us all to a new meeting was gonna help. But it didn't. The problem moved right along with us. In fact, I actually had trouble joining the meeting from there on. I eventually was able to get in by manually entering in some passcode, but it was kind of a pain in the ass. Holy schmoly, what a freaking ordeal this is turning out to. God damn.
You said it, Rick.
She had done something to mess around with how people use the link or how participants join or something. I'm not sure exactly what. The only one thing I know for sure is it wasn't the goddamn government.
No, I was going off about the government, and then everyone around me was like calling me paranoid, and I was like, I don't think so, but it's okay. Like, I can deal with the stress. I can't really deal with the stress, but I feel bad for my family because I get stressed out. Okay, I'm good.
Breathe, Leo, breathe.
Yeah, it's gonna be way more stressful if you attach a vast conspiracy to it, so try not to do that. And that was me, trying to get her to chill out with that nonsense, but she just wasn't having it.
Of like, wow, like 20 people are telling me that they are getting kicked out of this meeting, and I'm like, why is this happening, right? And you made that comment about the devil or Satan not wanting you to speak. And that spoke to my soul. And I literally was like telling my son, like, fuck, dude, that fucking spoke to my soul. Cause like, I was like, damn, this is some scary shit for me to recognize that I'm such a political activist that all the time I have all kinds of like weird, sketchy shit happen. I just had a bunch of videos disappear from my like website, I think, and I'm just like super concerned. And
She kept at it, and so I finally said something, and this time I was a bit more direct. I'm still looking up, I'm still Googling all this stuff. Whenever we have these little like hiccups in, in the event, I really try to get to the bottom of it to make sure it doesn't happen next time. But from what I'm reading on Google, it's like something that kind of, it's not, I mean, it's like, it seems to happen frequently. I think it's just like bugs in the system. I don't think it's the government coming after you for your activism, Leo. I think it's just hiccups in the fucking
And if
matrix.
this system's been around long enough, they should have those bugs out by now.
You would think, I know. And it's like, we've been doing these events for 2 years. We should have our shit together a little bit better by now, but what can you say?
I totally disagree. But I respectfully disagree, but I strongly and vehemently disagree. I don't think it's a reflection on us. Like, that's where I think the kindness and the understanding that the psychedelics give us teaches us kindness and love to ourselves, and not to shame one another, but also how important it is to look at how revolutionary this work really is. It's illegal work. You're working in an illegal space. I think it's very naive to think that the government isn't involved in these communities. I think that that's the reality. And
And they would go out of their way to sabotage this Zoom meeting.
Well, when 20 people say they're getting kicked out, I just have to wonder why. And there actually have been reports about Zoom working with the US government on censorship and spying and stuff.
Yeah,
So
I looked it up. It says when people are having a hard
Yeah.
time entering, to just like you have to manually enter in the like passcode and stuff. So I mean, I think it's something like we could have fixed on our end, but that's just me. Okay, I'm gonna shut up now. And man, I did not know it at the time, but calling Leo out and implying that something is her fault was absolutely the worst thing you could possibly do to this woman. She is incredibly sensitive about how people judge her and how screw-ups like this could reflect poorly upon her reputation, and you cannot call this woman out in any way without her taking it as you are trying to shame and humiliate and degrade her. That's what this look of panic and worry on her face is. I hate you, Rick Luna. I wanted to blame it all on the government. Now people are gonna think it's my fault. And good Lord, on a pogo stick did I ever send this woman into a rage. Holy shark balls. I've never seen anything like it. She actually hate typed me out a 15-page manifesto written like a Broadway stage play about how I'm a misogynistic woman hater with blood on my hands for my years of subjugation, and she's gonna report me to the National Council of Psychic Witches, and I'm a narc and a fed and an agent saboteur. And she bragged and bragged about blowing my cover, said I've been MK Ultra to do the slave master's bidding. It's so freaking nuts, man. I will link it down in the description if you ever want to treat yourself to 15 pages of rage and lunacy. And that finally brings us to the present day. I really thought I knew Leo pretty well. I thought we were friends and partners in activism. I also thought I had a keen eye for spotting phony-ass gurus and wannabe cult leaders that have infiltrated the psychedelic movement. I was really curious to know how all of this had been under my nose the whole time. So I went back over a few years of Leo's presentations and interviews and Zoom events that she's done, and since then have realized the red flags were around me the whole time. I just believed in the work we were doing so much that I wasn't looking for them. But now that I see everything perfectly clearly, I want to ask you, how well do you know Leo Russell? Well, I guarantee by the end of this video, you're gonna know who she really is and what she really stands for. I want to begin with Leo's malignant narcissism. It's the big golden crown on her head that's so heavy it knocks her over and she face plants, like all the time. But to her, it's so shiny and beautiful, she just keeps putting it back on her head no matter how stupid it makes her look or how much it hinders her ability to walk forward. I was seeing it as a recent development in her personality, but it turns out people have been trying to tell her for years now, please, please take that hideous monstrosity off of your head.
And that's interesting when it comes to privilege in the plant medicine community, because, you know, I started Decrim Nature Seattle and then really felt like that was taken from me, right? But taken from me in the respect of it was the largest city in the United States, in fact, the world, to decriminalize plant medicine. And so you have all these stories by like Rolling Stone magazine and so forth, and they give credit to Andrew Lewis, right? And Andrew Lewis is a city council member who kind of signed on the dotted line. Like he wasn't there for the weekly meetings. He didn't initiate the group, you know? So I initiated the group, right? And my name was never mentioned in the Rolling Stones article. And what I hear from people a lot is like that I can be narcissistic or something. And I always kind of push back and say, am I narcissistic or am I just asking for credit for the work that I've done, right? And throughout history, women have been doing a lot of work that they don't get credit for. Like behind a lot of these great writers and these great artists and all this other stuff are these women, right? And that's what history is now showing us, is that these women never got credit.
This story is a total lie. While researching this video, I reached out to one of the gentlemen that was a core member of Decriminalize Nature Seattle when Leo joined. She did not initiate the group, and she definitely didn't have it taken from her either. She joined several months after it was already up and running and immediately started power tripping and being an insufferable douche. So it's nobody's fault but her own that she missed out on this big Rolling Stone magazine article. And instead of trying to learn from these mistakes and making commitments to being a better person and all that, she doubles down. She starts saying her narcissism is actually one of her greatest attributes. It's just that the world feels threatened by her boundless and epic levels of awesome female empowerment.
So a lot of times with women in general, but in the psychedelic movement, if you talk about wanting to have power, and what is power? You know, power is the ability to influence. Power is the ability to create change. So I find a lot of times I'll hear in the community like, oh, she's such a narcissist, things like this. And it really bothers me because I'm like, I don't hear men talked about in the same way. And what does it mean if a woman openly acknowledges wanting power? Like, why is that a bad thing? Or why is that such a threat?
She loves to talk about wanting power as much as she loves to complain about not having it. It is an obsession. Check out this rant I found of her talking about wanting to have the powers of a queen, and she's totally serious too. I've actually heard her describe herself as having queen-like tendencies before. It's really weird.
So the image of a queen, right? You'll see a lot of times Black women will talk about being a queen, right? And for me, being a queen, it means that you're powerful, you know, you're unapologetic, you're deserving of being worshipped, you're strong, you're not asking for permission, you're giving orders, you're ruling the land, right? And they're not taking input on those orders, right? They're giving them, right? But as far as like what it means to embody being a queen, I mean, that's a very powerful image, right? But I see within the American culture that you don't see white women as often, or if at all, really being allowed to call themselves queens, right? So the question I was kind of putting to the group was, where do we see white women celebrate being queens in popular culture, right? Because what I see is I'll see things like women that want to celebrate how fabulous they are, white women that want to celebrate how fabulous they are, that somehow this is kind of tied into narcissism, right? Like Kim Kardashian or something, right? That kind of like blatant narcissism. But it's interesting, like in this situation within Black culture, it's being a queen is powerful, right? It's reclaiming power and so forth. But within white women culture, we're talking about it being narcissism. And, this is, just room for thought on do white women get to be queens?
I don't even know where to start with this one. Does she think that this queen costume gives Beyonce the authority to rule the land and pass royal decrees and shit? And why is white spelled with a Y? She never explains what the difference is, so it still comes across as kind of southern fried to me. And what do you mean black women can reclaim power and celebrate being fabulous, but white women can't because they'll be called narcissistic? I'm sorry, man, but that's one ignorant step away from saying you should be able to use the N-word too, because black people say it all the time. And what do you mean there's no white queens in popular culture? What about Madonna, or Taylor Swift, or Barbara frickin' Streisand? People call her narcissistic for a very specific reason, and here she is trying to pretend it's this major injustice that all white women are facing these days. And it gets worse. There's more.
In this analogy that I want to use, this story, it's the slave class, right, is rising up on the plantation model, right, and the plantation economic model, and they're rising up from the slave quarters. We're kind of at that pivotal point in human history from the 1960s until now with Black Lives Matter. And they're headed for that plantation house, right, to demand justice, right? And they deserve justice, right? They have righteous indignation and trauma that needs to be to seek justice, right? So they reach the plantation house, right? But it's almost like the white male slave owner has sent his wife to the door to answer the door, if you will, if you could just imagine her for a moment. And if we can just step into a place of mercy for a moment, instead of kind of like this automatic anger, because we're in that angry mode as we're getting to the front door and we're meeting whoever's, opening that door. But the slave owner's wife, right, she was sold to her husband probably when she was like 16 in an economic arrangement with her father. And in that white male power structure, she can't own property, and she's, maybe raped nightly. She's physically and emotionally abused in this scenario. So she doesn't recognize having any significant historical power. It's like coming to her and saying, you're responsible for this lengthy history of land ownership and for this economic system and so forth. And she's like, what are you talking about? I have no economic rights. I have no money of my own, etc.
Yes, I'm sure that's exactly what a bunch of really angry slaves want to hear, is the slave owner's wife prattle on about all her white lady problems and how bad she's got it. So the slave owner is supposed to be America and its economic model that's set up to favor wealthy white dudes. His wife is either supposed to be all of white ladies or all of the Karens. I'm not really sure. That part makes no sense. And then the slave uprising is this pivotal moment in history from the civil rights movement onward to Black Lives Matter. It's dumb. I don't like it. But what do you got?
One thing I want to point out is, the white male power system is fine with the white woman being the one to answer the door. It's fine with white women being the one held accountable for white culture, if you will. When we come for them and we say we want these white women to be held accountable, these Karens, one, I don't believe they're going to be learning from shame. And now we're also looking at white women that aren't able to own a sense of responsibility or accountability because, in my perception, they're not seeing themselves as having had that much power for very long, right? And so to get people's buy-in, and to get them to really create systemic change, you need to get white women to challenge the white male power structure, right?
We live in a country where a white dude on a killing spree can still be holding a loaded AR-15, yet somehow be taken into custody without incident. But a black dude holding his wallet during a routine traffic stop gets blasted 9 times in the chest. So people hit the streets in protest, demanding change because the bodies just keep piling up, and she's saying that the white male power structure collectively shoved all their wives out the door and said, hey, I know you're pissed about all the police shootings and systemic racism, but take her instead. And all these angry people in the streets were like, yeah, let's get her. Let's hold her responsible for everything. And that's how Karens became the cultural phenomena that they are today. And Leo saw all those viral videos of these hateful, racist, entitled white ladies throwing foods at restaurant workers, using the N-word in traffic, calling the cops on a black family for using a community pool, or destroying a whole Walmart because they asked her to wear a mask. And she says, please, please have mercy and stop picking on these poor Karens. Sure, they're acting like racist assholes, but they aren't the cause of racism. They're not used to holding all the power, so how can they be held accountable and responsible for their actions? They're as much a victim of the white male power structure as anybody else. Obviously, she sees herself as having plenty of power if she thinks it's her right to walk up to a whole crew of Mexican landscapers, tell them all to stop speaking Spanish, and ask to see their legal documentation. But the worst part of it all is that she's saying, hey, to all you people out there seeking justice in the streets, get in line, because us white ladies were here first. When we finally are given full stock in the white man's power structure, then we can start addressing all this systemic racism. But until then, don't expect any meaningful kind of change. That's not challenging the white male power structure. That's whining that you feel you got screwed, deserve a bigger slice of the pie, and you sound terrified that some brown person might beat you to it. We hear this type of messaging all the time on conservative news and on right-wing podcasts. First of all, she's taking sides with the Karens, and second of all, she sees all these people fighting for justice and somehow says, oh my God, they're coming for us. If these people are given a little more freedom and justice, that means I'm going to get a little bit less. Because when you're in a place of privilege and entitlement, it feels like persecution when you see others get ahead. I don't watch a whole lot of conservative news, but when I do, this is the kind of stuff they... Hey... Wait a minute. Leo, do you spend lots of time watching a lot of conservative news?
So I spend a lot of time watching conservative news because I'm trying to lead a political movement. I've watched a lot of Sean Ryan. I've watched a lot of Joe Rogan. I've watched a lot of Ben Shapiro. I've watched a lot of Megan Ryan. I've watched a lot of Tucker Carlson. I've watched a lot of Candace Owens because I want to understand the other.
That may be how it got started, but at some point she became the other, because she really began to relate to and like all of these things she was seeing and hearing while consuming these copious amounts of conservative media.
And when I'm watching the conservative news stations, as far as like seeing young and vibrant Republican white women, I'm seeing them up there on the stages, right, commanding the microphone, and they're fighting, they're fiery. And when I say they may be upholding the slave master's message, what I'm saying is they could be arguing for a policy that doesn't really serve their gender. But if I'm looking for power and I'm looking for role models and I'm seeing white women that are able to be angry and in the limelight, then I too can see like what that appeal is, which is like, wow, I get to get up there, and it's not just like old Nancy Pelosi that gets to like, you know, do insider trading and everyone looks the other way. Like I get to actually get up there and be young and not in my 70s and really speak about my anger. And these women have anger, right? So they may be channeling that anger in a way that is misdirected or in a way that is actually being utilized because they're pawns, right? That's up for debate.
Nope. It is not up for debate at all. These women are there to help strip hard-earned rights away from other women. End of story. Leo would gladly do her part to help set women back 150 years if it meant she finally got to have power over others and be in the limelight. She is obsessed with getting herself on TV and rubbing elbows with famous and powerful people, particularly famous conservatives.
So here I put kind of a little joke where I'm like, help me get on Sean Ryan. Just because Sean Ryan is pro psychedelics, his life was very touched by ibogaine healing. And I just think he's a cool guy. I want to be on Joe Rogan, right? Like I want to be on Joe Rogan because I like a lot of the stuff that Joe Rogan covers. So these are some of my ideas. Help Leo get a reality show on leading in the political movement with Netflix. I was working on that for a while and it seemed to stymie, if that's a word. It's stymied. Help me get on Joe Rogan or Sean Ryan or Tucker Carlson. I'm trying to get some famous conservatives together. So if you know Elon Musk, if you know Joe Rogan, the gentleman who killed Osama bin Laden is a supporter of ibogaine therapy. So if you know any of these people, I'm trying to get a conservative group together to talk about psychedelics.
I think this huge shift to the right Leo has made politically towards conservatism has less to do with policy and ideology and more to do with the fact that nobody else would put her on TV. But maybe, just maybe, these guys might. Anyways, moving on. Apparently I'm not the only one to put two and two together and figure out that some of the stuff Leo says sounds kind of racist, or at the very least is incredibly insensitive to people of color, because it's something she mentions being accused of all the time now.
So I get a little fed up because you need the kind of enthusiasm that folks have for Trump, but for a psychedelic leader that's bipartisan, right? But you need these fans, if you will, to be so in love with that leader that they're just like, I don't care. You told me she's racist and hates black people. And by the way, I don't hate black people. And so these folks that love to be out there and pin some other horrible thing on me, like I would just encourage you to get to know me, look at the work that I've done, that kind of thing, before you would think that that I'm this horrible person, right? Which is kind of sad that I even have to say that. But at this point, I understand that, like on the daily, I'm receiving new allegations.
Those are words I could never in my life imagine having to say. Under no circumstances in the known universe or any of the dimensions beyond would I ever have to reassure the community that I don't hate black people. She knows people are saying that about her. Obviously, she's just not the kind of person that would ever consider what she needs to change about herself so that they stop saying she hates black people. She can't be bothered to consider any of that, though, but she is willing to consider the idea that it could all be part of a government plot to label her as a racist in an effort to sow chaos and discord in the psychedelic movement.
But what I tell everyone is you should be thinking about that the FBI has a file on you if you're a political organizer in this space in any way, and you should really be thinking very intelligently about what your file says about you. You know, a wise man knows what their weaknesses are and knows what their like Achilles heels are. Like we all have Achilles heels, so maybe pride is your heel, or vanity, or your reputation. Like for me, if I'm looking at my file, I'm like, oh, this lady really cares about people of color. So like if you sent a person of color in and then told everyone that she's racist, and had that person like lead the group in a huff, then you're now creating this narrative that she's racist. That's going to get under her skin because clearly she cares about like combating racism.
Listen to how preposterous and mind-numbingly ridiculous that is. She said something racist that offends a person of color. That person calls her out for it, gets upset, leaves the group in a huff, and her only explanation is that this person of color was a government plant that had been reading all the files the government has on her. She'll never apologize or correct her behavior or reflect upon her actions because to her it's all validation that she really is so freaking important, and her revolutionary activism is such a threat to the powers that be that the man is sending people of color into her orbit to pretend to be offended at the weird racist shit she says. And this whole what's in my government file thing gets a lot weirder from here.
Right, and I can think of several things that would be in my file. One of them is actually my droopy eyes that I have related to my myasthenia gravis disease. And recently another woman in the psychedelic movement, and I have proof of this, she came for me in a public group. Now she got thrown out of the group, which is rare because I'm used to people ignoring these kinds of attacks on me. But this woman came for me and attacked me. She said all these horrible things that were not true, right? Like things that might be a warning flag to some people. Like if someone's coming from that plant medicine space, why are they talking like that? Why are they speaking so rudely and so meanly to someone else in the psychedelic movement? So after this kind of like, I would just say general takedown of me that was filled with vitriol and meanness and cruelty and lies, she got to a point where she actually made fun of my eyes. And so that was like a little reminder to me of like, oh yeah, like I'm not saying necessarily this woman, but like the fact that she's coming for my eyes was a critical aha moment for me, because in my file is probably like, oh, she once thought she was a great beauty, right? And she's lost that beauty related to her disease, and like, you know, it gets under her skin. And so that's a way to like kind of poke her, like poke the bear. So I just think all of us who are in the psychedelic space need to know, if you are any kind of leader, how is someone going to poke your bear?
My eyes are probably in my file? What do you mean, maybe not necessarily this lady, but? I mean, how is any of that a critical aha moment if you aren't even really sure it's a... Oh, fuck it. You know what? Never mind. Let's just move on. My favorite part was the, normally I'm used to people ignoring all the attacks on me. I mean, the victim complex with this lady is unreal. And so we have arrived at the part of the video where Leo talks about kicking me out for being an undercover agent. It really is her at her worst. As a quick recap, I worked for her as a core member for 2 years until I called her out for some of her silly conspiracy nonsense, and she flew into a rage, said I was working with the government to bring her down, and sent me several pages of hate mail. We have a mutual friend named Eric Swenson, and she fully expected Eric to give her a bunch of sympathy, back up her decisions, stand by her side, praise her for her bravery and her keen intuition, and see her as a victim. When Eric didn't do this, she flew into another, even bigger rage and started sending him pages of hate mail. So here she is, soothing her bruised ego and her delicate little fifis by dishing out a bit of payback to Eric for his insolence, treachery, and betrayal. And check out how this toxic little dingleberry decides to spin this story.
As far as agents in the movement, it's funny to me that this is like such a taboo topic, because when I go to white old man like psychonauts that are like super hippy dippy and they're like, oh my God, this is such a great movement, and like everyone's so lovey dovey, and like let's do our underground circle, like Eric Swenson with his plant medicine community. You know, these are people that like normally I respect, normally I have a lot of admiration for. I'm like, oh, you know, they've gone before us and so forth. But I'll come to them with concerns and I'll say, you know, this is my lived experience. You know, if you compared it to a rape, right? It's like a woman coming to you saying, hey, I've had 400 lovers, right? But like 5 of them have raped me, right? And to have, to say like maybe 5% of the people I've dealt with seem a little sus to me, right? It seems like a little bit of a organized takedown. Seems like people come in and they fuck up your website, or they screw the pooch on something really important, or they end up leaving quickly after spreading all this like defamation and character assassination and it just seems like a coordinated takedown sometimes between two suspicious people. So when you shared those experiences, right, and I'm talking about like 5% of the 400 hippy dippy lovey dovey plant medicine people that I've dealt with, right? So when those kinds of things have happened and I've gone to someone like Eric Swenson to talk about those things, I'm generally not believed, right? They're like, oh, so-and-so, he's such a nice guy, or so-and-so, she's such a nice woman. Like you must be wrong, right? You must be wrong and you must be crazy, because crazy is kind of like what the label we put on women when we don't agree with them, right? So I haven't really had great experiences of coming to my community and saying, hey guys, like, there are agents in the community, just so you're aware. I go to these kind of like white men psychonauts with like my concerns about people infiltrating the movement and that kind of thing. And my lived experience with this, right? Like really shady stuff that goes down. And I'm like, it's hard for me to talk badly about anyone. And I'll be like, hey, this person is doing this weird stuff, or doing really strange stuff, or let me show you these 10 things they've done that just seem like they're sabotaging us. And the reception I get from like those old white male psychonauts is like, you're crazy, you're paranoid, Leo, just really sexist, like mentally ill shaming. I don't know. It just seems to be like this thing we do to women in politics.
I'm gonna take a brief moment here to speak to Leo directly. I mean, I know she's watching. She has to. It's got her name in the title. You aren't crazy, Leo. You have rotted your little noodle out pretty good with all those TikTok videos, but I don't know anybody that says you're crazy and actually means clinically insane. But you are unbelievable. So let's start with the fact that we all know you, dumb ass. You aren't nearly this major figure in the psychedelic movement that you think you are. So yeah, it's gonna sound a little silly when you say things like, well, they were spying on MLK Jr., so they're definitely spying on me. That's a pretty tough pill for you to just expect everybody to swallow. And for Christ's sake, you say so much incorrect and off-putting and ridiculous shit that it's getting harder and harder for anyone to take you serious anymore. And it's not because you're a woman. It's because you've spent years in the psychedelic community damaging your own credibility with stuff like this. You didn't just go up to Eric and say, hey, like, just so you know, there's agents everywhere. You made very specific accusations about somebody Eric knows very well and knows that couldn't possibly be true because he's not a fucking idiot. And now here you are, lying your silly little ass off and publicly dragging Eric's name through the mud and calling him a mentally ill shamer and a rape denier and a naive, glassy-eyed hippie simpleton, and he's guilty of all this really awful stuff that he does to shame and discredit the women he doesn't agree with. It's not your lived experience if it didn't happen, so you sound like a jackass trying to compare it to a rape. You just want all the sympathy and all the comfort and all the support we would normally offer to a woman that's suffering the additional pain of not having her story believed. But with you, it's all a big lie. None of it happened. If you had any decency at all, you would publicly retract these statements and apologize to Eric Swenson. Okay, ladies and gents, we are just about finished. We just got a few more clips to check out. A few weeks ago, she did this 3-hour-long stream on why the plant medicine movement is failing, and I came across some gems that were too good to not include in this video. After Trump got elected, it really bolstered Leo's confidence that she was onto something with this conservatism thing, and she figures Americans are desperate to have more idiotic and narcissistic cult leaders just like her in their lives.
Right? But in the psychedelic community, we're looking for this perfect leader, right? I get a lot of times complaints that I'm this or I'm that, and I'm like, hey, hold up, what the fuck? Like, why are you asking me to be a perfect leader? There's no such thing. And any political leader is going to have their warts and their issues and everything, right? So I get a little fed up because you need the kind of enthusiasm that folks have for Trump, but for a psychedelic leader that's bipartisan.
I have never once in the entire time I've known her heard anybody refer to her as a political leader. And I sure as fuck haven't met anyone that calls themselves one of her followers. I was there the whole time because I care about psychedelics. And I thought she did too. But she is practically on her knees begging everybody, please, please drink my Kool-Aid. It's so delicious and refreshing. And she's still obsessed with having power and being able to throw her weight around and jealous of all these people that actually are big figures in the psychedelic movement.
So I think I covered some of this, which was like David Bronner, New Approach, Rick Doblin, like, you know, are these people, like, I'm always interested in people's psychology. Like, are they enjoying this power? Are they enjoying being like this major figurehead in the movement as they throw their weight around? Like, I mean, probably honestly, yeah. Because I think people enjoy power. It makes them feel important. It makes them feel powerful.
And as we've already seen, she gets all bothered and works herself into a fit every time she sees somebody's name in print and thinks it should be hers. So here she is complaining that she should be the face of the movement and she should be shaping the direction it's going in. And all those other guys are total phonies and don't deserve it. She's the real expert, and all the newspapers and magazines should be coming to her if they want to know what's going on with psychedelics today.
I'm in the streets and they're not. And so it does bother me that they are shaping so much of the movement, whether it's the intellectual perspective, whether it's the money being channeled into different things, right? They're shaping it. Rick Doblin is shaping it, right? But these are not grassroots activist politicians that are in the street with the homies, right? It just does bother me that the Washington Post goes to Mason Marks for an assessment of what's happening. Doesn't the Washington Post care about what the movement is saying from the streets, right? Like, who's speaking for the movement should really be the question, right?
And then she's got the nerve to insist that all these major figures in the movement that she's been referring to as unworthy losers and posers and frauds and phonies need to be backing her financially and supporting her whether they like her or not. I'm sorry, man, but that's how cult leaders talk.
But they also need to invest in real leaders, right? And when they are assessing if someone is a leader, they need to be people that they've assessed, whether they like them or not, as being adequate bipartisan leaders, right? They are not putting their money behind that. They are not putting their money behind people that I would say are political leaders in the psychedelic space that are bipartisan. You know, I'm not just talking about me. I mean, clearly I want support. You know, that's why I'm doing the work that I do in terms of asking for support, right? Because I believe in what I'm doing and I believe in the people that I'm leading and, you know, that kind of thing.
And what would she do with the funds that have been invested in her after these major figures in the movement have assessed her to be an adequate bipartisan psychedelic political leader? Oh yeah, March on Washington, baby. Well, sort of a March on Washington.
And then I have a March on Washington that I'm trying to do, and I don't want it led, right, by people that are like all about like, let's have Black, queer, disabled, you know, people be the figurehead of that plant medicine March on Washington. I would say no, even though I have a great person who is queer, who is Black, who is disabled, to do an opening song and an opening talk and that kind of thing. But I really want the visual, and it's not about racism. It's about, we need people that are socially accepted in a bipartisan way, even maybe more leaning to the right, because right now the psychedelic community has been defined by these leftists.
For the greater good of the psychedelic movement, it's important we bring more conservatives into the fold and let them know that it's their movement too. But if they see too many dark faces around, or if you're acting all gay or something, it's gonna scare them off. So, for this March on Washington, no getting on stage, no getting on camera, no speaking to anybody, no traditionally black hairstyles or clothing, and unless your name is Kanye or Candace Owens, no two black people are going to be allowed to stand within 20 feet of each other. You know, optics. Yes, I'm sure this psychedelic Klan rally is gonna be a smash hit and lift the psychedelic movement up to soaring new heights. This next clip is my absolute favorite Leo clip ever. It has got it all, and bless her heart, she is trying so hard to sound like a legit activist that truly has her thumb on the pulse of the modern movement, and she's ready to deliver some compelling and hard-hitting, well-articulated, intelligent analysis, and then makes it all about 5 seconds in before she starts raving and blathering about utter nonsense. Again, imagine for a second that you're one of the many big money donors or influential leaders in the psychedelic movement that Leo reaches out to on the daily. She's been hounding you for weeks to please call her back so she can tell you all about how amazing she is and why you should give her millions of dollars, and then she drops this on you. I'm gonna let Leo just go on for about a minute, and then on the other side, I'll help you break down the 4 different topics we'll be talking about by then.
I do find it fascinating that Gavin Newsom, like, even though California is like, you know, this huge economy with so many liberal laws, that the issue of psychedelics is still not on the books there in a legal manner in any substantial way. You have to ask yourself why. It's just very strange to me that it would be blocked and handicapped and thwarted on so many levels, including by liberals that I've seen act out in very mysterious ways that always make me wonder, like maybe there's some secret agenda or something, because there will be people that are saying they're for decriminalization and saying they're for psychedelics, and then when they get there in front of that state legislature or whenever, they end up sabotaging, right? And sometimes I think we are afraid within the movement. I've had people come to me privately and say, oh, you know, so-and-so, they bombed in front of the state Senate. They screwed the pooch. They did something that really just made us all seem wacko or whatever, but they're afraid. You know, maybe that person's a veteran. Maybe that person is a person of color, like whatever. They're afraid to say that openly to the group, like, hey, that person that we thought was so great, that we thought supported us, got up there in front of the state legislature and said something completely different, completely wacky, and seemed unhinged, almost like an MK Ultra experiment gone haywire.
Topic number 1. California is a super liberal state, so she finds it odd that plant medicine activism there has been thwarted on so many levels and suspects there may be a secret agenda. Topic number 2. She suspects liberals are in on this secret agenda, and as an example, she cites a story about someone that spoke at the California state legislature, and in her eyes performed so poorly that she thinks he was bombing on purpose to sabotage the movement. Topic number 3. People come to her all the time to speak in private about how weird it is that this person performed poorly in front of the state legislature, and that people are afraid. They are afraid to bring this to the rest of the group because that person might be a person of color or a veteran or whatever. And finally, topic number 4. According to Leo, and based off these private conversations, she has deduced that this person's performance was so unhinged and counterproductive to the movement that it resembles an MK Ultra experiment gone haywire, whatever the fuck that means, and she's about to add a 5th topic about how everyone should educate themselves and look into the history of the CIA's mind control programs.
And for those of you who do not know the history of the US government, CIA, that kind of thing, with the MK Ultra program, and then like all the offshoots of the different MK Ultra programs, you know, it's a fascinating way to educate yourself about how psychedelics have been used for brain programming and things like that. it also gives you insight into, when people unravel in these kind of mysterious ways in the political realm, sometimes you have to ask yourself, like, is there like a neural link controlling them? Or, just that I think we're entering such a weird sci-fi society that when you factor in MK Ultra and you factor in Neuralink and you factor in like the latest in science and brain programming and social credit score and the NSA tracking everything we do, and just like when you factor in everything, it can feel pretty sci-fi. So you just never know. I'm just saying it's very odd to have these people that we think are going to be huge advocates. We think they're going to be a great speaker. We think they're going to be fabulous in front of that, that legislative body and not embarrass us and really like act just like they've acted up until that point, but then somehow the clone malfunctions or something happens and then they do crazy stuff, weird stuff. And I think as a community, we don't often allow ourselves to talk about that. Like people will tell me behind the scenes, like, it's so weird that this person sabotaged this, or they said this and then they ended up doing this other weird thing that totally counteracted what they said that they were going to do. And, and I just think sometimes we don't consider thinking outside the box. We're just like, oh, maybe they just had a bad day, or I don't know, maybe I got it wrong, but my secretary wrote down verbatim what they said, so my secretary agreed with me that they are totally contradicting themselves. But like, just sometimes it can be such a mind fuck that you're like, am I crazy? Like, what's happening here, right? But the more we can talk about that stuff and say, hey, I don't care if this person is a veteran or a person of color or whatever. I'm going to talk about how they did this weird thing, right? I'm not going to be censored by a fear of seeming disrespectful because I care about the greater movement. And I'm just wondering, what the fuck, right?
You're wondering what the fuck? Holy shit, Leo. MK Ultra was a CIA program that ended in the 70s. It was a Cold War era program. It's been kept alive by online conspiracy assholes that say the Illuminati is using MK Ultra to control all the celebrities in Hollywood and brainwash the masses with black magic and occult symbolism.
That's the mind control program you're under, Bill.
MK Ultra?
Yeah, MK Ultra mind control.
Are you kidding me now, or do you really think I'm under a mind control?
I do.
But yes, how very brave of you to take these controversial topics head on when nobody else would. I'm guessing that she's just really, really buttsore that this person was invited to speak at the California State Legislature and she wasn't. So inviting anybody but her is the same thing as sabotaging the psychedelic movement. All of this feels pretty sci-fi conspiracy silliness about malfunctioning clones and secret agendas. It's the big fuzzy blanket of warm, soothing heroin that she wraps herself in so that she never has to face the reality that she remains insignificant because she's been her own worst enemy. And I'm going to end this video with a short compilation of Leo repeating this new catchphrase she has, and this one is the strangest. Everything else she says, no matter how dumb or wacky or delusional or weird, I can kind of understand. I mean, I'll put myself in her shoes and think of why she's saying it. It's 'cause she's a conservative. It's 'cause she's a conspiracy theorist. It's 'cause she's extremely narcissistic. Or it's 'cause she's just generally kind of a dumbass. But this, I have no idea what she's getting at, why she's saying it, who she's saying it to, how it fits in, or what purpose it serves, and she repeats it over and over.
People are done with these one-dimensional healing stories of like, plant medicine changed my life, plant medicine changed my life. Like, it's so one-dimensional, it's so boring. And it's a snooze fest. And it's like a wind-up doll. You pull the string and they say, plant medicine changed my life, right? Well, we're done with it. It's boring. And so what if it changed your life, And they give us they're still trying to get it over the finish line with these one-dimensional plant medicine change my life stories which the public is bored with, right? We're bored. We know that supposedly plant medicine changes your life, but we don't have a real sense of it. We don't have a real sense of the movement. We don't have a real sense of the people. We're done with the new approach, tromping people out there, these stock people that give their spiel, plant medicine changed my life, blah, blah, blah. It's boring. Give something more to us. This is not enough. This is not doing it, right? This tactic is failing. Stop doing this. This is not working. It's boring, right? Boring, blah, 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 boring. So when you just strut out someone and says, trust this person, their life is changed by plant medicine, you can trust them, they're a nice person, and their story is great, and it's the same old boring story of plant medicine changed my life, no one cares. No one cares that plant medicine changed your life. We've turned off from listening to people like you with your short little one-dimensional, very superficial, to try to woo the populace with these boring one-dimensional healing stories, right? And society's done with it, right?
Seriously, what the hell is this? What the hell is she talking about? Society is done, the public is done, it's boring, so what? Yo, doofus, the whole reason the plant medicine movement is even a thing these days is because of all the revolutionary breakthroughs in mental health and addiction treatments and the mountains of hard empirical data that demonstrate that it really does work. All of these plant medicine change my life stories are the gravy that fuels this gravy train that you are trying to ride to status and stardom and fame and glory and power. It's boring. It's a snooze fest. It's one-dimensional. So what? Nobody cares. We're done with it. Who the fuck is the we in this situation? You're sick of it. You're sick of it because it's not why you're really here. This compilation was a big eye-opener for me because I realized that the entire time I worked for Leo, she never once shared a story of being healed by psychedelics in any way. No stories about finally being freed from a lifetime of trauma or addiction. No stories about it helping her with depression or anxiety, and no major profound spiritual awakenings of any kind either. She did talk an awful lot about how psychedelics validate all the wacky shit she already believes in. Doesn't have any stories about being healed in any kind of profound and meaningful way, but she does have a lot to say about portals to other dimensions and UAPs and otherworldly entities.
Kind of psychedelic consciousness, increasing connection with entities and UAPs and things of that nature. And so sometimes I wonder, like, do people not realize that maybe they're bringing in like entities or opening up portals that they don't even understand, and that we assume sometimes the government doesn't want these psychedelics out there. When you think about like MK Ultra and stuff like that, you start to think, well, maybe they don't want these medicines out there because they open up people's consciousness. But another thought is perhaps they allow people to open up interdimensional experiences, and it could be, we sometimes assume the government is always not in our favor, but it could be that the powers that be are aware of that and that they are concerned about what people are bringing in or opening up, if that makes sense.
And that's Leo's plan to woo the masses, something she's been failing at, might I add, but she thinks she's gonna get there with this cult of personality about how awesome she is and all of this bullshit about aliens and UAPs. I really wish it wouldn't have taken me so long to figure this out, but she lives in a complete fantasy. I thought by helping her, I was helping the movement, but all those hours and all that energy was actually going towards helping her become this. This is how Leo really sees herself in the world and the role that she wants to play in the psychedelic movement.
Also, if we go to this article with High Times, the Joan of Arc was into taking mushrooms. She was into fairies. She was into psychic premonitions. But she was also a great leader, and she was feisty, right? She was willing to take on the Catholic Church. And so it's kind of these images in human history of great leaders that were white women or European women. And as we are in this kind of second wave of the plant medicine movement, I ask myself, like, where are the Joan of Arc
the leading armies, the talking to spirits, the political leader, witchcraft roles, you know, where are those roles as we are examining the plant medicine movement, and what roles are there for white women?
I wasted 2 whole years of my life unwittingly assisting a delusional idiot as she attempts to make history as a political leader that does witchcraft and talks to spirits. And now she's got a chip on her shoulder and an axe to grind because the movement has not accepted her in this role and made her some kind of supreme ruler. I made this video in hopes that people won't make the same mistake I did. Please don't give her any money. Don't think that she means well. Don't think that she wants to help people or that she's serious about her activism. And now, after spinning my wheels for 2 years with nothing to show for it but heartbreaks and headaches and disappointment, I am going to flush the toilet on this obnoxious little turd, and I am never going to think about her again.
You can get a lot out of 2 grams. You don't need a whole ounce.
I got 2 grams stuck in my fucking toothbrush the next day. I'm like, I don't know.
Plant medicine changed my life.